The morning sun peeked through the warm blue curtains as Amara Johnson stood in front of her small bathroom mirror. Her fingers moved with practiced care through her thick, beautiful afro. 2 years of growth had turned it into a magnificent crown that framed her face perfectly. She smiled, tilting her head from side to side, making sure each section was flawless. "Papa, have you seen my blue hair pick?" she called out, her voice echoing in their modest 2-bedroom apartment. "Check the kitchen counter," her father's deep voice replied from the living room, where he was tying his work boots. He had the early shift at the construction site again. Amara found the pick exactly where he said it would be. Her father never missed a detail, something she had inherited from him. They had moved to this small town 5 years ago, leaving behind their extended family in Haiti after her mother's passing. It had been just the two of them ever since, making their way in a place that didn't always make them feel welcome. She carefully shaped the final section of her afro, taking pride in every curl. Her hair wasn't just hair, it was her history, her culture, her identity. In a school where she was one of the few black students, her afro made a statement she wasn't afraid to make. "You're going to be late if you don't hurry," her father said, appearing in the doorway. His face softened as he looked at her. "Though I understand why. Your hair looks beautiful, just like your mother's." Amara smiled, her heart warming at the comparison. "Thanks, Papa. I'll be quick." She packed her schoolbooks into her backpack, carefully tucking in her advanced calculus homework. Top of her class for 3 years running, Amara had plans for a scholarship to a good university. Nothing would get in her way, not the whispers in the hallways, not the side eyes in the classroom. What most people at Westridge High didn't know about Amara was what she did after school 3 days a week. While they assumed she went straight home to study, Amara actually headed to Riley's boxing gym, an old converted warehouse on the edge of town. That afternoon, like clockwork, she changed into worn gray sweatpants and a faded t-shirt in the gym's small locker room. She carefully wrapped her hands, the ritual as familiar as breathing. When she stepped out onto the training floor, she was a different person. "There she is," Coach Darlin called out, her gray hair tied back in a tight bun. "My star pupil." Amara grinned as she approached the heavy bag. For 5 years, this place had been her second home. The smell of sweat and leather, the rhythmic sounds of gloves hitting bags, and the squeak of shoes on the floor, it all felt right. "How's school?" Darlin asked, holding the bag steady as Amara began her warm-up jabs. "Same as always," Amara replied, finding her rhythm. "Left jab, right cross. Left jab, right cross. Got a big calculus test on Friday." "You'll ace it," Darlin said with certainty. "Just like you'll ace the Henderson tournament next month." Amara increased her pace, her fists connecting with satisfying thuds against the leather. The tension from school began to melt away with each punch. Here she wasn't the quiet girl with the afro who sat in the front row and raised her hand too often. Here she was powerful, respected. "Been watching that footage I sent you?" Darlin asked, adjusting her stance to brace against Amara's increasingly powerful strikes. "Every night," Amara nodded, sweat beginning to bead on her forehead. Her right hook has a tell. She drops her shoulder slightly before she swings. Darlin's face broke into a proud smile. "That's my girl, always paying attention to the details." As the training session intensified, Amara lost herself in the workout. Hook, jab, uppercut, weave. Her movements were fluid, her timing impeccable. Other boxers in the gym occasionally paused their own training to watch her work. At 17, she was already building a reputation in regional amateur boxing circles. 3 wins, no losses so far. 2 hours later, her body pleasantly sore and her mind clear, Amara carefully rewrapped her hair and changed back into her school clothes. No one at Westridge knew about this part of her life. Not the teachers who praised her academic achievements. Not the students who either ignored her or whispered behind her back. And certainly not Madison Wells and her followers, who made it their mission to make Amara feel unwelcome. As Amara walked home under the setting sun, her backpack heavy with books and her gym bag slung over her shoulder, she thought about the different worlds she inhabited, and wondered how long she could keep them separate. The hallways of Westridge High buzzed with the usual Monday morning chaos. Amara walked with her head high, books clutched to her chest, her afro catching the fluorescent lights from above. She had spent extra time on it that morning, each curl perfectly defined. As she approached her locker, the crowd seemed to part, and not in a good way. Madison Wells stood by the water fountain, surrounded by her usual group of followers. The daughter of the man who owned half the businesses in town, Madison had everything: designer clothes, the latest phone, and a sleek sports car she parked in the spot reserved for her by the school entrance. What she didn't have was Amara's grades, and that bothered her more than she would ever admit. "Well, look who it is," Madison said loudly as Amara passed. "Did you get stuck in a light socket this morning?" Her friends snickered on cue. Amara kept walking, pretending not to hear, but her shoulders tensed. This was nothing new. For 2 years, Madison had made comments about her hair, her clothes, her accent, anything she could use as ammunition. In chemistry class, Amara took her usual seat at the front. Mr. Patterson handed back their tests from last week. "Excellent work as usual, Amara," he said with a smile, placing her paper face down on the desk. She turned it over to see a bright red 98% circled at the top. From 2 rows back, Madison's voice carried clearly. "Of course she got an A. She probably has nothing better to do than study all weekend." Amara's pencil froze mid-note. She could feel eyes on her back, but didn't turn around. Years of similar comments had taught her that reaction was exactly what Madison wanted. At lunch, Amara sat alone at her usual corner table, a book propped open beside her sandwich. She was deep into a paragraph about southpaw boxing techniques when a shadow fell across the page. "That seat taken?" asked Aiden Chen, a boy from her calculus class. Amara looked up, surprised. "No, go ahead." Aiden sat down and unpacked his lunch. "Patterson's test was brutal, huh? I heard you aced it, though." "It wasn't too bad," Amara said, closing her book. Across the cafeteria, Madison watched them with narrowed eyes. She leaned in to whisper something to Tiffany, her closest friend, never taking her gaze off Amara. "Don't look now," Aiden said quietly, "but I think we're being watched." Amara sighed. Nothing new there. "Why does she hate you so much anyway?" Amara shrugged. "Started when I got the highest score on the state assessments last year. Before that, I wasn't even on her radar." The afternoon passed without incident until gym class, the last period of the day. As Amara changed into her shorts and t-shirt, she could hear Madison and her friends at the other end of the locker room. "Did you see Ms. Clark put the homecoming court nominations up?" Tiffany was saying. "Guess who's on the list?" "Better be me," Madison replied, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. "You are, but so is Amara Johnson." There was a moment of silence. Amara pretended to be tying her shoelaces, but her ears were burning. "That's ridiculous," Madison finally said, her voice cold. "Who would nominate her?" "Probably the teachers," Tiffany replied. "You know they love her." On the volleyball court, Madison's attacks became literal. Every spike seemed aimed directly at Amara, regardless of where she stood. During the 3rd game, a ball hit Amara's face hard enough to make her nose bleed. "Oops," Madison said with fake concern as the gym teacher rushed over with tissues. "Guess you should have ducked." After school, instead of heading to the boxing gym, Amara went straight home. Her nose had stopped bleeding, but a dull headache had set in. As she walked, she noticed a car following slowly behind her, Madison's white convertible. "Need a ride, Einstein?" Madison called out, her friends giggling beside her. "Or are you afraid your hair might cause a traffic accident?" Amara kept walking, eyes forward. The car followed for another block before speeding off, tires screeching against the pavement. At home, she stared at her phone, at the anonymous message that had appeared on her social media. "No one wants to see that bird's nest at homecoming. Drop out or regret it." Amara's fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to reply. Instead, she closed the app and reached for her boxing gloves. Tonight, the heavy bag would take a real beating. Spirit Week at Westridge High turned the normally plain hallways into a riot of blue and gold decorations. Giant paper stars hung from the ceiling, and hand-painted banners announcing the homecoming dance covered the walls. For most students, it was the highlight of the fall semester. For Amara, it had become a week of dread. That morning, she hesitated before checking the final homecoming court list posted outside the main office. A small crowd had already gathered, pointing and chatting excitedly. Amara hung back, waiting for them to disperse before she approached. There it was, in black and white. Amara Johnson, listed among the 5 nominees for Homecoming Queen. Her stomach knotted. Being nominated should have felt like an honor, but instead, it felt like a target had been placed on her back. "Congratulations," said Ms. Rivera, the English teacher, noticing Amara staring at the list. "You've earned it. Your essay on community service really impressed the faculty committee." Amara managed a smile. "Thank you." She turned away, only to find Madison and 3 of her friends blocking her path. "Enjoy your little moment," Madison said, her voice sweet but her eyes cold. "Must be nice having teachers who play favorites." Amara tried to step around them, but the girls moved in sync, keeping her boxed in against the wall. The warning bell rang, giving Amara an excuse to push past. "I need to get to class." Throughout the day, the tension grew. In the cafeteria, someone accidentally spilled milk on Amara's backpack. During history, she found a note on her desk with a crude drawing of a crown over what was clearly meant to be her afro, with the words "noteworthy" scrawled beneath it. By the time gym class rolled around, Amara's nerves were frayed. She changed quickly, hoping to avoid any confrontation in the locker room. But Coach Bennett was out sick, and the substitute announced they had a free period as long as they stayed in the gym. Half the class headed for the bleachers to chat, while others grabbed basketballs. Amara decided to use the time to study. She changed back into her regular clothes and settled on a bottom bench with her physics textbook. So focused on the formulas, she didn't notice the gym emptying out as students drifted toward the vending machines outside. Well, the queen needs her alone time. Amara's head snapped up. Madison stood there with Tiffany and Zoe, the 3 of them forming a half circle around her. "What do you want?" Amara asked, closing her book. Madison sat down beside her, too close for comfort. "Just girl talk. About the dance. About your interesting nomination." She reached out and touched Amara's hair without permission. "What do you even plan to do with this for the photos? It won't fit in the crown." Amara pulled away. "Don't touch me." "So defensive," Tiffany said with a laugh. "We're just trying to help." Zoe moved behind Amara. "Yeah, we have some styling tips." The next moment happened so fast. Madison pulled something from her bag, a pair of scissors that gleamed under the gym lights. Amara's eyes widened as she tried to stand, but Zoe's hands clamped down on her shoulders, shoving her back down. "Hold her still," Madison ordered, and Tiffany grabbed Amara's arms. "Stop," Amara shouted, struggling against their grip. "Let me go." Madison leaned in close. "Consider this a makeover." The scissors opened with a metallic snick. "You should be thanking us." The first cut took a chunk from the right side of Amara's afro. Tears sprang to her eyes as she fought harder, kicking out, but the 3 girls had her pinned. "Tiffany, get your phone," Madison commanded. "Record this. It's too good not to share." Through her tears, Amara saw the phone pointed at her face as more chunks of her carefully grown hair fell to the bench and floor. Each snip of the scissors felt like a cut straight to her heart. "Please stop," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please." But they didn't stop until her beautiful afro was ruined, uneven chunks sticking out in all directions, the floor around them littered with her curls. Only then did they release her. "There," Madison said, admiring her handiwork as Tiffany continued recording. "Now you look like the joke you are." They left her there, surrounded by the remains of her pride, their laughter echoing in the empty gym as Amara's hands trembled over what was left of her hair. Amara didn't remember how she got home. The world had blurred around her as she stuffed her books into her backpack, pulled up her hoodie to cover her ruined hair, and walked out of school with her head down. Nobody stopped her. Nobody asked if she was okay. She just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, tears silently streaming down her face. The apartment was empty when she arrived. Her father wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. Amara stood in the bathroom, finally gathering the courage to look in the mirror. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Chunks missing. Uneven patches. Her beautiful afro destroyed. 2 years of growth and care gone in a few cruel minutes. She opened the drawer beneath the sink and found her father's electric razor. With shaking hands, she plugged it in. The buzzing filled the small bathroom as she brought it to what remained of her hair. She hesitated for only a moment before pushing it across her scalp. Clumps fell into the sink, onto her shoulders, at her feet. She kept going until there was nothing left but the shortest fuzz covering her head. When the razor fell silent, Amara stared at her reflection. Without her hair, her face looked different, more exposed, more vulnerable, but also somehow stronger. Her cheekbones stood out sharply, her eyes larger and more intense. She ran a hand over her nearly bald head, feeling the smoothness, the newness of it. The front door opened and closed. "Amara, are you home early?" She couldn't answer. Her throat felt too tight. Footsteps approached the bathroom. "Honey, are you?" Her father stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene, his daughter with her shaved head, hair scattered everywhere, tears on her cheeks. "What happened?" he asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. The story spilled out of her then, Madison's jealousy, the homecoming nomination, the ambush in the gym. With each word, her father's expression hardened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "We're calling the police," he said when she finished. "We're calling the school. This is assault." "Papa." "No, this has gone too far." He pulled out his phone. "Those girls and their parents need to face consequences." Amara placed her hand over his. "Please, wait." Her father paused, looking into her eyes. "Amara, they can't get away with this." "They won't," she said with a certainty that surprised even her. "But I need time. 1 week. Let me handle this my way first." He set his phone down on the counter. "What are you thinking?" Amara didn't answer right away. She turned back to the mirror, studying her reflection again. "They think they broke me. They think I'm going to hide, drop out of the homecoming court, maybe even switch schools." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "I want them to believe that for a few days." Her father sat on the edge of the bathtub, watching her with concern. "And then?" "And then I show them who I really am." For the first time since the attack, Amara felt something other than pain and humiliation, something like resolve, something like power. That night, after a quiet dinner, Amara went to her room and took out her boxing gloves. She held them in her hands, feeling their weight, remembering the countless hours of training. On her desk sat a flyer that Coach Darlin had given her last week, the Henderson tournament just 10 days away. She had been wavering about participating, worried it might affect her studies. Not anymore. She pulled out her phone and found the video that was already circulating among her classmates, Madison and her friends laughing as they cut her hair. Somehow, seeing it again didn't hurt as much as she expected. Instead, it fueled something inside her. She propped her phone against her lamp and began to wrap her hands, her movements precise and practiced. Then she stood in front of her mirror, assuming her boxing stance. Jab, cross, hook. Her reflection showed a different Amara now, focused, determined. She would go back to school, but not right away. For the next 3 days, she would let the rumors fly. Let Madison think she'd won. Let the video spread. And then she would return on her own terms. As she shadowboxed in the small space of her bedroom, a plan began to form. Not a plan for revenge. That wasn't who she was. But a plan to reclaim her power, her dignity, and to show everyone at Westridge High who Amara Johnson really was. 3 days passed with no sign of Amara at Westridge High. Her empty desk in the front row of every class stood out like a missing tooth. Teachers asked if anyone had heard from her. Most students just shrugged, but Madison and her friends exchanged knowing smiles. The video had spread through the school like wildfire. Some watched it with shocked expressions. Others looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to speak up. A few teachers caught wind of it, but without Amara there to confirm what happened, they could only make note of it and wait. On Thursday morning, Madison strutted down the main hallway, feeling untouchable. The homecoming dance was just 2 days away, and with Amara gone, her path to being crowned queen seemed clear. "Did you hear? She's transferring to Jefferson High," Tiffany told Madison at her locker. "My cousin works in the office and saw her dad requesting her records." Madison smiled, applying a fresh coat of lip gloss. "Can't say I'm surprised. Some people just can't handle a little hairstyling advice." The first bell rang, sending students scurrying to their homerooms. Madison and her friends took their time, knowing no teacher would dare mark them late. They turned the corner and stopped dead in their tracks. Amara stood by her locker, calmly sorting through her books. But she wasn't the same Amara who had left school 3 days ago. Her head was completely shaved, the smooth dome accentuating her striking features. She wore a simple outfit: clean jeans, white sneakers, and a fitted black t-shirt that revealed arms that were noticeably toned. But it wasn't just her appearance that had changed, it was how she carried herself. Gone was the hunched posture and averted gaze. This Amara stood tall, movements deliberate and confident. Students passing by did double takes, some breaking into smiles and welcoming her back. A few boys who had never given her a second glance now stared appreciatively. Mr. Patterson stopped to chat with her, his face serious as she nodded at whatever he was saying. "What is she doing here?" Zoe whispered, grabbing Madison's arm. "I thought she was gone for good." Madison shook her off, trying to maintain her composure. "Who cares? Look at her head, she looks ridiculous." But Madison's voice lacked its usual conviction. There was something unsettling about the way Amara looked now, like she knew something they didn't. Throughout the morning, Amara went about her day as if nothing had happened. She answered questions in class, took notes, and walked the hallways with her head held high. She didn't look at Madison or acknowledge her existence. It was as if the bullies had become invisible. By lunchtime, the cafeteria buzzed with talk about Amara's return and transformation. She sat at her usual corner table, alone at first, until Aiden Chen joined her, soon followed by 2 other students who had never sat with her before. Madison picked at her salad, irritation growing as she watched more people stop by Amara's table, chatting and laughing with her. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "She's turning this into some kind of statement." "Maybe we should say something to her," Tiffany suggested. "You know, clear the air before the dance." Madison glared at her. "There's nothing to clear. We gave her a much-needed makeover, that's all." When the final bell rang, Madison hurried to the parking lot, eager to escape the strange energy that had permeated the school that day. She was digging through her purse for her car keys when a shadow fell across her. Madison. She looked up to find Amara standing there, calm and poised. "What do you want?" Madison snapped, trying to hide her surprise. Without a word, Amara held out a flyer. Madison hesitated before taking it. "The Henderson Boxing Tournament," Amara said simply. "Tomorrow night at 7. I'll be competing in the middleweight division." She tilted her head slightly. "I thought you might want to see the other side of me." Madison stared at the flyer, confusion crossing her face. "Boxing? You?" Amara smiled, a small confident smile that never reached her eyes. 5 years and counting. I'm undefeated in my weight class." She turned to walk away, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Oh, and I'll still be at the dance on Saturday. Save me a dance if you win Queen." The invitation carried an undertone that made Madison's skin prickle. As Amara walked across the parking lot, students moved aside, watching her with newfound respect and curiosity. Madison stood frozen, the flyer crumpled in her hand, feeling for the first time like she might have picked on the wrong girl. Friday evening arrived with a cool breeze that rustled the autumn leaves around Henderson Community Center. Inside, the old gymnasium had been transformed. A boxing ring stood in the center, bright lights hanging overhead, with rows of folding chairs surrounding it. The smell of popcorn and excitement filled the air as people filed in, finding their seats for the amateur boxing tournament. In the women's locker room, Amara sat on a bench, hands wrapped and ready. Coach Darlin knelt in front of her, checking the reps one last time. "You seem different today," Darlin said, looking up at her fighter, more focused. Amara nodded. "I am." "This have anything to do with that new haircut?" Darlin asked, gently touching Amara's nearly bald head. She had noticed the change right away, but hadn't pushed for details. "Something like that," Amara replied. "Well, whatever it is, use it, channel it, but don't let it control you." Darlin stood up. "Remember what I taught you." "Boxing is about discipline, not anger," Amara finished. She'd heard this 100 times before, but tonight, the words carried new meaning. Outside in the gathering crowd, Madison Wells felt completely out of place. She hadn't planned to come. She'd thrown away Amara's flyer as soon as she got home yesterday. But curiosity had gnawed at her all night, making her wonder if Amara had been telling the truth. "I still can't believe we're here," Tiffany whispered beside her. Madison had convinced her to come along, refusing to show up alone. "We're just here to laugh," Madison replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "I bet she's terrible." As they found seats in the third row, Madison was surprised to see several faces she recognized from school. Aiden Chen waved at them from across the aisle, genuinely happy to see more classmates. "Hey, you guys came too. Awesome. Amara is going to be so pumped to have supporters." Supporters? The word made Madison squirm. That wasn't why she was here. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, welcoming everyone to the Henderson Amateur Boxing Tournament. The crowd clapped as the first fighters were introduced, two young men in the lightweight division. Madison barely paid attention to their match, her eyes constantly darting to the entrance where the next fighters would appear. After two more matches, the announcer's voice returned. Next up, in the women's middleweight division, with a record of 3 wins and 0 losses, Amara the Scholar Johnson. A cheer went up from one corner of the room where Coach Darlin and some gym regulars had gathered. To Madison's surprise, several Westridge students joined in, including Aiden, who stood up and whistled loudly. Then Amara appeared, walking confidently toward the ring in a simple black robe. When she reached the edge, she removed it to reveal a fitted tank top and boxing shorts. Madison's eyes widened at the sight of Amara's toned arms and shoulders, the body of an athlete who had clearly been training for years. And her opponent, with a record of 5 wins and 1 loss, Vivian the Viper Rodriguez. The other fighter entered, slightly taller than Amara, with a serious expression and quick, bouncy steps. The two met in the center of the ring as the referee gave instructions. Then the bell rang and they returned to their corners. "This is real," Tiffany whispered, clearly impressed. "She's actually a boxer." Madison didn't respond, her eyes fixed on Amara, who moved with a grace and confidence she'd never seen before. When the bell rang again, both fighters advanced to the center. The first round started cautiously, both fighters testing each other with jabs and footwork. But halfway through, something changed in Amara's expression. She began to press forward more aggressively, her movements precise and calculated. She landed a perfect left hook that sent Vivian stumbling backward. The crowd erupted. "Did you see that?" someone yelled nearby. Round 2 began with Vivian being more careful, but Amara was relentless. She blocked most of Vivian's attempts and countered with combinations that looked almost effortless. Madison sat frozen, her previous smirk long gone. This was not the quiet, bookish girl she had tormented. This was someone else entirely, powerful, skilled, and completely in control. In the final round, Amara cornered Vivian against the ropes and unleashed a series of body shots, followed by a right cross that nearly ended the match. The crowd was on their feet now, including most of the Westridge students. Only Madison remained seated, a strange mix of emotions washing over her. When the final bell rang, there was no doubt about the winner. The referee raised Amara's gloved hand as the announcer declared her the victor by unanimous decision. Sweat glistened on her shaved head as she nodded in acknowledgement of the cheers. And then, just for a moment, her eyes found Madison's in the crowd. No anger, no gloating, just a clear, steady gaze that seemed to ask, "Now do you see?" Monday morning brought a different kind of tension to Westridge High. The weekend had changed things. The video of Madison cutting Amara's hair, initially shared as a trophy among a small group, had somehow leaked to the wider school community. Now it played on dozens of phones, accompanied by another video. Amara dominating her boxing match at the Henderson tournament. Principal Rivera called Amara into her office first thing. She sat across from the older woman, calm and composed. "I've seen the video," Principal Rivera said, her face grave. "Why didn't you come to us right away?" Amara looked at her hands. "I needed time to think, to decide how to handle it myself." "You know this is assault," the principal continued. "We've called your father, and Madison's parents are on their way in." Down the hall, Madison sat on a hard plastic chair outside the administrative offices. Her father, Mr. Wells, paced back and forth, his expensive suit rumpled from rushing over from his downtown office. He hadn't spoken a word to her since they'd gotten in the car. He'd just handed her his phone with the video playing and driven in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "How could you?" he finally said, his voice low and tight. "How could you do something so cruel?" Before Madison could answer, the office door opened. Principal Rivera appeared. "Mr. Wells Madison, please come in." Inside, Amara and her father already sat in 2 chairs. Madison couldn't look at either of them as she took her seat. The meeting lasted an hour. Words like suspension, legal action, and permanent record hung in the air. Madison's father didn't defend her. Instead, he asked what he could do to make things right. By lunchtime, the news had spread throughout the school. Madison, Tiffany, and Zoe had been suspended for 2 weeks. They were banned from all extracurricular activities for the rest of the semester, including the homecoming dance. "It's not fair," Tiffany had texted Madison. "We were just joking around." But Madison couldn't bring herself to agree anymore. The look in her father's eyes, disappointment mixed with shame, had hit her harder than any punishment the school could give. That evening, Mr. Wells surprised Madison by asking her to join him for a drive. They'd pulled up at a community center across town, in a neighborhood Madison rarely visited. "What are we doing here?" she asked as they walked inside. "Learning," her father replied. The room they entered was filled with teenagers sitting in a circle. A sign on the wall read, "Respect Forward, Building Community Through Understanding." "This is a program I'm funding," her father explained quietly. "Young people from different backgrounds sharing their experiences with discrimination and bullying. You'll be coming twice a week as part of making amends." Madison wanted to protest but stopped herself. She recognized one of the group leaders, a tall woman with close-cropped hair who looked vaguely familiar. "That's Amara's boxing coach," her father said, following her gaze. "She's agreed to let you participate despite what happened." The next Saturday night, while the homecoming dance went on without her, Madison sat in her room working on something she never thought she'd write, an apology letter. Not the forced one the school required, but a real one. It had taken her 5 drafts already, and the words still didn't feel right. Across town, Amara stood in front of her mirror, a dusting of hair now covering her scalp. She ran her hand over it, feeling the soft beginnings of regrowth. The homecoming crown sat on her desk. She'd won by a landslide after the video spread. She'd gone to the dance for just an hour, accepted the crown to thunderous applause, and then left early for more training. The state boxing championship was 6 months away, and Coach Darlin believed she had a real shot at winning. A notification pinged on her phone, a new email from the community center. More students had signed up for the anti-bullying group she had helped start. Among the names of volunteers willing to share their stories was a surprising one, Madison Wells. Amara set down her phone and smiled at her reflection. Her hair would grow back eventually, but she was in no hurry. She kind of liked the new look. It showed her face clearly, no hiding. And after everything that had happened, hiding was the last thing Amara wanted to do ever again.